You said you have until 11.
Yeah, a little before 11, but I kind of want to shift mindsets because I'll be talking as the CEO of a vegetable powder company in that one.
Yeah. What time do you want to cut off by?
10 of, so about an hour. And we're live, by the way. So we're live. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Awakening Consciousness with Asher and Jesse. We are back out of YouTube suspension or YouTube timeout, whatever you want to call it. What's that?
Quarantine.
Suspension. Quarantine. There we go. We tested positive for truth. So
right, we had thoughts.
They had to quarantine. Yeah, they tested positive. We tested positive for independent thinking. And so we had to be quarantined for not 2, but 3 weeks, in fact. And so
I've been sitting in the corner the whole time.
Oh, well, that's good. I think that's the instructions that they tell us is you sit in the corner and don't have any independent thoughts on your own. And so
I learned my lesson.
You are good. So no independent thoughts. We are going to be taking the side of Ukraine here.
I now stand with Ukraine. Right.
You stand with Ukraine, right? Nice. Do you have your Ukraine flag so you can wave it around?
Well, it's on my Facebook profile. It's like,
right.
Yeah.
Yes. Does it have rainbow colors on it?
Right. Absolutely. And I'm also masked in my photo as well. And then outside of the flag, I still have also a second letter that says I got my COVID-19 booster. So Good. I have the stamp of approval. YouTube is they let me out of the corner. I learned my lesson. Here we are.
Right. Awesome. So yes, welcome everybody. Hey Terry, thanks for joining us. And hold on. Okay, I posted it there. So yeah, let's talk about what's happening. So in my opinion, they have essentially run the COVID narrative into the ground. It's becoming very tired, very stale. Even the people who were cheering for, more interventions, let's say, whether it's in your arm or on your face or whatever, even those people are getting a little bit tired of it. And so in order to retain some semblance of credibility, they can't keep pushing narratives indefinitely. They have to sort of ease up before they can keep going. So think of like a boa constrictor. When a boa constrictor has its prey and they're trying to squeeze it, before it does a further squeeze, it lets up so that it can squeeze even tighter. And so I think that's a good analogy for how they operate. And in this case, it's like, we've run the COVID narrative into the ground. We have HIV going on around there, and who knows what might happen out of that. But it seems like they need to pivot to a new narrative, and the new narrative is Russia invading Ukraine, and this could lead to the start of World War III. So, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's interesting
how they operate, and in this case, it's like we've run the COVID narrative into the ground. We have.
Oh, I'm sorry, Asher. I am sorry.
I think you had a YouTube playing in the background.
I did. So I was listening to you, thinking you're talking, and you're waiting for me to talk. So yeah, I mean, I don't think World War III is where we're at here. First of all,
no.
So I don't think that's what's happening. Like if what had been going on now was happening 2 to 3 years ago, I would have had some fear about it. And I probably would have been texting people and emailing people and being like, hey, like, you see what's going on? Look, it's happening. They're setting it up. I don't feel that way at all right now. I think that in the context of the bifurcation, in the context of the split, where we've gotten so absurd in the narrative, and yes, people are still buying into it. I mean, it's amazing, right? but we've gotten so absurd, right? I don't know if the people listening to this, if you're following, I mean, there's a list of now, it's up to 20 or 30 different things, right, that have come out on the Ukraine, whatever is going on in Ukraine. And, I'm not there. I don't know what's going on. It's clearly not as the media is reporting it. I've looked at some different things. I have maybe an idea about it, but whatever's going on there, they're using fake footage, fake guns, video game footage. It's gotten comical, and we've said this a lot, of course. It's been comical for quite a while here, but the level of it almost seems like they're trolling. it almost seems like us, they're just trolling us. And again, from the sort of bigger picture, I don't know, is this just God trying to wake people up? Have we gotten so false in everything that it's just sort of, I don't know, but I don't think it's World War III right now. I don't think people are falling for it, even though, yes, some people are. And I stand with Ukraine stuff, and that's all happening. And, CNN's doing their thing, and, the UN and all the cabal is doing its thing. But it seems to me that we're way past all that, like as a species, like our consciousness, at least on this side, right? At least on our side of things.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know. I don't have any, I don't even care, really, which is kind of funny. It's like whatever they're doing, it's funny. It's gotten very comical. I don't really know, what they're doing in the end. In my world, this is the most I've never had a time in my life where it's easier to function, where it's easier to get things done, where I can move things into place as quickly as I can now, where it's as fun. I'm enjoying this tremendously. And I feel like the energy on Earth right now is so good. It's so good. And yeah, like the narrative, I don't know. I'm hardly even paying attention to it at this point. I mean, I am like, right, I'm forwarding you things and funny things, and I'm looking at it here and there, but it's just a comedy show. And I don't mean it like, somebody's going to surely say, oh, people are dying and how can you make light of it? And I don't, maybe that people are dying, and I'm not trying to make light of death. And obviously that's it. If bombs are being dropped on people for real, like that's awful. And I totally am against that, 100%. But at the end of the day, whatever narrative you buy into, whether you buy into the CNN narrative or you buy into the white hat narrative, where, Russia's sort of the good guys, and they're taking out, they're taking out bio labs and things like that. I don't know. Both of it to me is kind of just a comedy show. And I think from the bigger picture, our side of things, I just think is past where these psyops work. And I think there's enough people and a high enough degree level of consciousness right now that it's just the next sort of boogeyman, and I don't think it's working. And I agree, right? The COVID narrative's over, and we've said that for a while, right? The COVID narrative's over. They're on to the next thing. Here it is, Ukraine, whatever they're doing there. Again, I don't expect this to lead to World War III. I think we've got supply chain stuff and currency stuff that would be in line before those kinds of things. But, who knows what the plan is and what they're trying to do. But I'm not worried about it, any of it.
Yeah, well, being worried about it is different from what we think their intentions are. So I want to take a step back and sort of, like, how did they get people to focus and shift their attention to, being all on board with COVID interventions, let's say, and then very quickly shift to supporting Ukraine. And so what they did was sort of paint them as the victim, as the and they did that with showing women in combat. So that's a good one. That's a good way to get people to choose a side. They did it by constantly demonizing Russia and Putin, for the last, it feels like a long time that Russia has been this big boogeyman, and Putin's this evil guy. He's set to take over the world or whatever it is. And I'm not saying that Putin's a good guy. It seems like he is doing what's in the best interest of Russia, which is what you would expect from a president of Russia. And it seems like the demonization has been a convenient way to paint a boogeyman and to paint other people that they were trying to attack, i.e. Trump and those types of people, as a way to sort of intertwine them and say, because Trump is, colluding or talking with Putin, he's bad also. And so Putin's been a scapegoat for a lot of the US propaganda that's gone on over the years. So it was very easy and a very quick transition to get the NPCs, the non-player characters, to go from face masks to Ukraine flag. And so that's on sort of the baseline ground floor level. And then I think what they're doing is they're arming a lot of the Ukraine citizens. And I was watching a video where this guy, I think he was an American in Ukraine, and he's saying how they've armed a lot of the gangs in Kiev, and now there's a ton of violence, and it's not safe anymore, and it's not the Russians that he's worried about. And you have a lot of weird stuff going on with I can't remember his name, but the Ukrainian president, he's literally an actor, straight out of show business. I think he's a comedian or something like that. And now he's the president, and he's, there's some weird stuff going on there. And so you have a situation that's set up to get everyone on one side. And what I worry about is when both the sort of right and the left in the US are both on one side. And I think a lot of the people on the right have fallen for this psyop as well, and are supporting Ukraine and are supporting at least the sanctions and possibly military intervention on the US part. Which I definitely don't want to see that. And I think there's talk about a draft in the US. I think there was some talk about having women enter the draft. I think there's a bill being proposed. I don't know if it's being voted on, but I think it's being proposed, and that would definitely get a lot of people's attention if that ever happened. And yeah, I mean, it's so that's like the baseline ground floor 3D level. Now you go to a level above that where it's like, you also have Russia with a legitimate grievance on the US and NATO breaking treaties. The agreement was that they would never have a country in NATO that borders Russia. And so they're trying to get Ukraine in NATO. Ukraine borders Russia, and that's goes against their agreement. And Putin feels like he has to push back, or he feels like that the line in the sand is being crossed. We can't have that, and so we're going to do something about it. It's also interesting that he waited until the Olympics, which were in China, were over. And so does that mean that the Chinese are on the side of Russians, or does that mean that the Chinese are sort of allowing this to happen? you also have the Russia and maybe even China being kicked out of the SWIFT system, which is the system for bank exchanges and sending money from one bank to another. And so, yeah, there's just a lot of stuff going on. So I think maybe I didn't understand your phrasing, but I think this is the attempt for World War III.
It could be.
Whether it succeeds or not is a different story. But I think what they're trying to do is set up a case where, NATO and therefore the US gets involved, Russia maybe gets China involved, and then it turns into World War III. Now, are people going to fall for this and go along with the plan? Because again, we live in a world of narratives, and it's not necessarily about it's more about what they can show what's happening, meaning the theater of what's going on, the theater of the war, the theater of, there was a picture of the former Miss Ukraine. Now she's donning her army fatigues and she's fighting the Russians too. And it's like, okay, this is just ridiculous. It's getting absurd at this point. And, so we're living in a world of narratives. And if the narrative can catch, if the narrative spreads like they claim a virus does, then this can be the catalyst for a bigger conflict, a bigger war. And I think that's the playbook here. I think that's what they're trying to do. And it's whether or not the people go along with it is another story, because like you said, a lot of people are waking up. A lot of people are onto this. We had someone in our Telegram group who I think is from Russia, is Russian and Ukrainian and Belarusian. I don't know if that's but she's saying the same thing. She's saying that a lot of the, I guess, more or less truth community in those areas know that the presidents of the respective countries are basically controlled and working for the cabal and playing their role. And they know that this is, the theater of war. And yeah, so how many people know that? How many people are aware of what's going on, know that this is really more about theater than anything else, know that this is more about, trying to saber rattle rather than an actual conflict. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't people there and there aren't people getting possibly killed, injured, fighting going on, weapons being used, that type of stuff. It doesn't mean that there isn't that. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that these people are used as pawns on a grand chessboard. Now, so now we're taking it above sort of the national level thing, where it's like, it's Ukraine against Russia, it's this against that. Now we're talking about the controllers who are above the national borders. They're not American or Canadian or French or whatever. In some cases they do have to respond a little bit to what their local people have to say, but the reality is they're operating above the national borders. And so for them, this is just moving pieces on a chessboard to get their desired outcome. The desired outcome, as it has been from the beginning, is direct control over you. Now, how do they get direct control over you? Well, they can load your financial and medical data onto something that they've injected into you, and therefore control where you're and load in a digital sort of crypto Fed-based, Fed coin or something like that, and then control where you're allowed to spend your money, who you're allowed to spend it with, and where you're allowed to go with it. That's the end game for them. Direct human control over you. Direct control over you through these injectable devices and the sort of digital Fed coin, crypto, Fed coin types thing. And we've gone through the injection round, and now we've gone through a case where it's like what else can we blame the collapse of supply chains, society, the value of the currency, the rest of it? And well, here's another scapegoat, because you're seeing all these articles on like, oh, inflation rises because of Ukraine and Russia. It's like inflation's been going up for the last 100 years, and now you're blaming on Russia and Ukraine. It's like, we're not born yesterday.
And
so
had
that's
a jump before that conflict started, of course, as well.
Yeah, right. So here's another scapegoat that I think the attempt is to get it into World War III. Whether we get there or not, that's a different story.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a perfect breakdown. I mean, I literally, I could talk about all kinds of stuff you talked about, but I think you broke that down perfectly. I think that's exactly right. The only sort of like the sort of differentiation or distinction that I'm making, right, is it's not that there aren't aspects of the cabal that may be trying to use this to start World War III. It certainly looks like that, right? And you hit on all those points. And right, of course, China and Russia are aligned, and we've got basically the NATO countries aligned, and that would be World War III. We've known this for literally centuries, right? But you and I have known this, for a long time, more than a decade. So yes, it absolutely looks like that. I think you hit on it, but that's sort of like there's levels to the cabal, right? I think the ultimate level is Satan. I think below that there's like alien races and things like that involved. I think below that there's like hybrid human weirdness going on. I think below that there's like, people who have some power, right, in corporate world and government. And then below that there's sort of, the enforcers, right? And then below that there's the people that matter, right? Because it's a battle for humanity's soul. So you brought up narrative, right? And that's exactly right. And then I would add to that consent. So it's like, it's the narrative that's working really hard to try to get human consent to then go along with what they're trying to do, to then create the outcomes they're trying to create. And so, I don't know. I don't know if their full intention right now is World War III or not. At one level of that, it may be. It looks that way, certainly. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that the realities are splitting to the point where it could both happen and not happen simultaneously. Like I think we're getting to that point, like literally. So I mean, that's an interesting piece. You touched on the SWIFT thing, because again, right, I think the next sort of pieces here are supply chain, and then monetary systems sometime after that. That seems, again, no predictions. But that seems like a reasonable chain of events to me. That seems, I don't know if it's a likelihood or not, but that seems very possible to me. And if you just think about this, right? So Putin, let's just take the narrative for a second, right? So Putin has a debt-based monetary system, right? So you can't say like, oh, Putin's, working, you can, right? So you can make the arguments for Trump, you can make the arguments for Putin. And actually, I think there's some good ones, really. I actually do. But they're still operating certainly within that context, right? So there's that piece. Then we have these countries that they're enemies. Why? Like, why is Russia an enemy of the United States? This goes back to like what, World War II, the Cold War, not World War II. Sorry, this goes back to the Cold War, right? And the Soviet Union that takes shape after World War II, and so on and so forth. But at this point in time, like other than they need a narrative, right? Other than like they need a narrative, what is the actual conflict? But between these countries, right? I don't know. You don't know. Nobody knows. It's just the narrative. We don't like Russia, right? So we're living in this just like made up world that we buy into, and we're like, oh my gosh, like this country is having this country, and oh, what happens if this country gets involved? And and then, right, and that's the point of it, I think, in a certain way, is just to get people caught up in that sort of vortex, that sort of narrative, right, that sort of thing. And so, buddy, don't touch that. So it's dog poop. So to get back to the money system, right? The SWIFT thing. So, okay, so let me get this straight. NATO, led by the US, right? Or the US, let's just say, we're gonna kick Russia and China, or Russia, I guess, out of the SWIFT system. I see. So we want to make China have to pull out sort of the US monetary system. this is in the US interests. This is in the interest of the US, right? So so that's absurd on its face if you understand, the way this works at all, right? China owns a massive amount of US debt. China could literally collapse the US currency if they wanted to, just by dumping debt that they hold. So having like a currency war with China is if you're the cabal, right? It's the way you bring about the collapse of the dollar. But if you're working in US interests, obviously you wouldn't do that. So that's hilarious to me, kind of, right? That this SWIFT thing. I mean, the only thing interesting to me about the SWIFT thing is that, this could signal the dollar being in trouble, right? That's what's interesting to me about it. You mentioned conservatives, right? And yeah, this is nobody. Hey, I'm recording. Can you please be quiet? This is where to me, people like Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro, and I just diverge from them immediately, right? It's like, these conservatives, quote unquote conservatives, who are, they're supporting Ukraine, and they're, standing with Ukraine, and they're calling Biden a pussy, basically, and they're saying this wouldn't have happened under Trump, and all this kind of stuff. And yeah, I mean, they lose me there completely.
Yeah, couple things. So number one, you mentioned how like World War III could simultaneously happen and not happen at the same time, and that's a good point, because like for someone like me, it's like, there was no virus infecting millions of people going around the world for the last 2 years. Like, no, that didn't happen. There was a show that went on, and I was an observer of that show, but I was living my own life, working on my garden and building my businesses and having fun with my family and friends. Like, that's what my life was like the last 2 years. And I didn't have a COVID experience. Like, that was not part of my world. And so in the same way, it's going to be with World War III if the narrative catches. And so you're going to have people who see through it, who know what's coming and know what they have to do to prepare for what's coming. They're going to live their lives and build their families and grow their gardens and take care of their chickens and the rest of it. And World War III is not going to be a part of that world. And so, but the other people, the people who are glued to the narrative, who are, as Bob and Ann says, sucked into it without any critical thinking at all. There's definitely a bunch of people who are going to be in that realm, and so for them it's going to be a nightmare and not a fun time to live through, and just a lot of death and destruction and the rest of it. And so yeah, I mean, that's the two worlds that are being set up. So
good.
I was going to change the subject to another point, but if you want to comment on that point, go for it.
I mean, it's semi-changing, semi-related, but this is why you have to focus on creating the new, creating what you want to create, because you have to pull out completely of the matrix, right? It can't be like, oh, I don't believe the narrative. All right, now let me get up and go to work, right? And go work for this accounting firm, right? Go work for, go argue a legal case today in court, or, go work at this factory. And I'm not shitting on people who have jobs, like that's fine. But you have to focus on creating the new. It's not enough to just not buy in. The way that this whole thing is successful, and I believe it already is, but the way that this whole thing is successful is that while they're doing all their black magic, and while they're trying to suck people into their narrative and into that sort of energy vortex of madness that that they've been doing to humanity for eons. You don't need a counter force like, no, fuck you, you're wrong. You don't need that. And you also don't need apathy of like, oh, I know they're doing all this, but what can I do? No, you basically just need to ignore it. Like, you've got to pull out, so you're not connected to that anymore, so it doesn't affect you. So you don't care, right? You don't care if the supply chain collapses. Like, you don't care if you lose your job, right? Because you're not in that world. So you got to pull out, and then you have to actually create the thing you want to live in. And then lots of people on the planet doing that then allows for that other narrative, right? That different energy field to really take hold. And then that wins. People fall into that. That's created. That becomes a power center. That becomes a power base. It spreads, it goes around, and that's already happening. Like, we're well into that process. And so, that's really, to me, sort of what matters. Sort of the takeaway is not whether it's the white hats or whether Putin's good guy or bad guy, whether Trump's good guy or bad guy, whether it's, it's real or not real, whether it's the start of World War III or not. Fine. Like, I take a few minutes and laugh at some of these things and look at them because it's interesting, sort of, fine, no problem. It's okay to, like, know what's going on. But beyond that, like, I'm out, building a road into a piece of land right now that I want to do all this stuff on. I'm working on my projects. I'm meeting people. I'm, having all these amazing experiences. I'm healing. I'm, right. That's where you want your energy to be. Like, that's what you want to be focused on. What you want. What world do you want to live in? The narrative is going to be there until the split is complete. So the narrative is going to continue, and it's fine to take a look at it and check it out, sort of like peek in and be like, hey, what are they doing? Oh, COVID's still going on. Oh, COVID's not going on anymore. Okay. Like, right. Like, it's fine to check it out. But at the end of the day, like, beyond that, any more energy you give it than that is a negative, in my opinion. And because that's just fear, and then they win, right? And so any more energy you give it than that, I think, is a negative. And then again, feeling hopeless about it, I don't think that's good either, right? So it's not like, oh, I know this is going on, I don't believe it, and I didn't buy in, but what can I do? You can do a lot, man. As Asher always says, right? You can go outside and plant a garden. You can go have connect with people. You can go make friends. You can start working on stuff. You can think about, is your life the way you want it? How do you want your life to look? Is it that way? What are the steps you need to take to get there? And so on and so forth. And I think that's really the point for me.
Yeah, good points. And now I'm going to bring it back into the narrative and what's going on. So I think, if we're looking above national boundaries, we're looking at grand chessboard sort of level right here. I think the people, the controllers have decided that they can't make the West work anymore like it used to, and so something needs to be done. Now, is that population reduction? I think so. What I also think is it's the movement of the production and financial center of the world from the West to Russia, China. Now, Russia is very rich in natural resources. China already has the productive capacity, and increasingly so. We've essentially outsourced production starting in the 90s to mostly China and other Asian countries. And I think a lot of it has to do with the entitlement and morality and degradation of the people of society. So we now have a culture, it's based on like very superficial things, likes, how many likes did you get on your Instagram post, or how many followers do you have, and how many, how many dates on Tinder did you set up? Like, it's very superficial. A lot. Nice. Nice. It's very, very superficial, vain, degraded, immoral, and entitled. And you can't get that population to work and be productive. And I think they've realized that. And I think they have to do something to sort of, okay, well, you guys aren't going to work anymore, so we're going to move this over to Russia, China, and the rest of it. And Putin, I don't know if you saw Putin's speech, but he was actually outlining some actual true things of like how the US has been, they invaded Iraq under false pretenses. They invaded Syria and Libya and the clusterfuck that caused. And that's actually true. Now, I'm not saying that Putin's a good guy and he's, the white hat, or, he's fighting the New World Order or whatever it is. I think he's part of it just like the rest of them. There's different factions and there's different, and different factions are jockeying for power. But I think what's happened is the West has degraded itself so much morally through, just superficial, lifestyle, hookup culture, vanity, materialism, and the rest of it, to the point where we're not productive. Like you take a look at these people, they're double, triple, whatever. Like these people are not going to be good, productive workers. And that's what they want. Think of this as a farm. The controllers, they're like farmers, and the farms aren't farms, they're countries. And so they're farming our productivity. And they've realized that because of what I just outlined about the nature of people in the West and all this stuff, that they can't work with these people anymore. These people are no longer going to serve our needs, i.e. be productive. And so they have to shift that productivity out of the West and into the East. And so I think that's also what's going on as well. And so what could very well happen is a massive reduction in the standard of living in the West. Combination of crumbling supply chains, loss of production, devaluation of the currency, and just the immorality, entitlement, and laziness and unproductivity of the people. That's what's happening. And there's only so long it can go before it starts to really have an impact. I mean, I talk to people from all over. I run two businesses, and we source products from all over the world, Brazil, Europe, other places, all over the place. So I talk to people, and everyone has, oh man, this thing costs 5% more, or this thing took 5% longer to get to me, or, I can't get enough workers, so it's taking longer, or it's costing more, or there's just these little paper cuts that have like a 2%, 5%, 10%, 1% impact on whatever part of the economy that they're involved in, that they're doing. And it's only going to be a matter of time before these little cuts start to add up to something that has a real impact on everyone's lives. And so that's something to be aware of and concerned about. And it's part of the reason why we started the show, and I'll go back to that for a second. And that is to become more self-sufficient, self-reliant, grow your garden, start, raise chickens, get out of cities, that type of thing, but also to have a network of people, build your community, both locally in real life and online too, because that's how people are connecting these days. And get together with like-minded people who know what's going on and can, you can help them and they can help you survive what's coming. So I think that's what's going on as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I agree with everything you said. A couple things to touch on. So first of all, Brian in the chat made a hilarious comment and said, clearly Putin has cured COVID with his recent moves, right? Exactly. Right.
Like, I think so.
So there you go. I want to, so, all right. So, you talked, again, I think you nailed all of that. You want to, and you mentioned currency, but you want to, if you just want to like very just clearly see that, right? The power of the dollar creates the standard of living that the US experiences, and then you can absolutely translate that over to European currencies as well. And as the dollar, if the dollar is taken out, which mathematically at some point has to happen, the US loses its standard of living. Like that's it, right? So I, just to sort of drive that point home. And then the whole immorality thing, right? So I'm not really I'm not a religious person. I respect and follow a lot of different things, including the Bible. Like I respect the Bible a lot. I have lots of thoughts about it and, different things, which we won't get into here, but I'm not a religious person, but I do. So I don't necessarily come at things from a like biblically moral perspective. But that being said, I do think there is a lot of value in the morality of the Bible. Like I really do. And I think that if we're sort of looking at that from sort of one perspective, right? It's like the devil or Satan was given dominion, right? Was given dominion. But humans have free will, right? Humans have free will. And so the game is that it's all about temptation, right? So it's like the game is like, look, I'm gonna look over here, and every time you make that soul destroying decision where you sacrifice a value you hold, you sacrifice a moral, you tell a lie, you sacrifice who you are to make some money or to get a girl or to whatever, to like some material success or whatever. Every time you sort of do that, you're contracting, right? And if you do that enough, you end up in hell, right? Like you end up being owned by the devil because you've did it. And so that immorality, in my opinion, where up is down, right? I mean, like literally family is now bad, being heterosexual and strong and like having a family and raising your children and feeding them healthy and not injecting them with medical experiments and so on and so forth is now bad. So literally, right, you talk about that immorality, it's to the point where it has to collapse. There isn't another possibility. You can't have a society as degraded morally as this world has become, and I don't know that it's everywhere, but certainly the Western world, much of the world, morality is gone. And I'm not just referring to like biblical morality that plays, definitely, I think biblical morality works for that, but like overall, right? People have literally sold their soul. They've said like money is more important than virtue, right? Money is more important than anything, right? Than my kids and my wife, than my right. Well, this is how the devil works, right? This is how it works. It's through temptation and it's through free will. And God sits back and is like, hey, they have free will. I gave them everything. I gave them this beautiful playground, this beautiful place like that they can live. I gave them nothing but abundance. I gave them a mind that works. I gave them and they do what they do, right? And so so I very much agree with your points there. And I think that, yes, collapse is the only possibility for a society like that. And that's played out a million times in history. I want to also drive home, you mentioned it's a farm. Let me give an example of this. So in Ecuador, and many countries in the world have this exact same tax system. The US doesn't, but many countries in the world have this exact same tax system. So in Ecuador, where I live, the way the tax system works is that they have a value added tax, right? Here it's low, it's 12%. In Europe and most places, it's like 18, 24, 32. I mean, unbelievable, right? So they have a value added tax. So every time you go and buy something, you have to pay a 12% extra, or the store has to pay 12% every, whatever, but somebody has to pay 12% to the government. Now, once you get into that system, which they've incentivized that tremendously. So as a company, right? So I run companies. So as a company, we need to document expense. We have to. If we don't document expense, we're going to have a huge tax bill at the end of the year. We're going to get crushed, right? We have to document expense. So we need to have that 12% all over the place. We need to document that. And every time we document anything, there's the 12%. Okay. But then they've set it up to incentivize you to do that. So once you've paid that 12%, you can then offset that against, I don't want to get into all the details, like it'll take a long time to explain, but you can offset that. So there's an incentive to pay the 12%. You actually, like, it's in your interest to pay the 12%. Quite literally. Like, I sat with my accountant for hours the other day, like strategizing on all these things. He's a really good accountant, and I actually like understand fully now. I am totally on board, right? like, oh, great. We're only going to pay the 12%, but it helps us in all these other ways. Perfect. Right. So then you have that. Then Ecuador has something called like Declaración de Patrimonio or something like that. I don't remember the phrasing, but if you have over a certain amount of wealth, and it's a very low number, I don't remember what it is, but this includes all your properties. This includes your bank accounts. This includes anything you own. They want you to tell them every year how much you have. Now, they're not taxing it. They're just keeping track of the farm. They're just keeping track of the animals. They're just making sure they understand where everybody's at, because it's a closed system. All of their resources are theirs as far as they're concerned, right? The currency, they own it. It's just debt anyway, but they own it, right? The land, they own it. The cars, they own it. It's all registered to them. And so they've implemented a tracking system. And again, many, many countries in this world have the exact same tax system. I believe the tax system here, which is much better than France, but I believe it was modeled after the French system, is my understanding. I think most of Europe has this system. I think much of the world has this system, as I understand it. So they have this system where it's like, okay, they'll let you like run around and do commerce, sure. But they want you to tell them every single thing. And if you don't, you get in serious trouble, right? If you don't report here, this is my wealth this year. This is how much wealth I have. You're in trouble. You have problems. Like there's issues that come. So it illustrates that point you're making. This is a slave system. You know, what does Alex Jones say? Prison planet, right? This is a slave system. This is a farm. You're absolutely right. And they track and trace and do all of that to their cattle, us, and they want to know all about their economic activities and other activities, right? They want to listen in. They want to track this, track that. You know, privacy's gone. They don't even pretend about privacy anymore. I mean, they have laws even in the US, they have laws where the phone companies have to keep a record of all your text messages. They can't delete it. They have to keep it by law. That's what happened to the Fourth Amendment, or I don't even know. But what happened to privacy, right? It used to be you need a warrant to get a wiretap, right, to listen to someone's conversation. Now they just tell the phone. Now that we are in the digital age, they just tell the phone companies, no, you got to keep them all just in case we need it later, right? So this is where we're at now. And now the point I want to make on that, right, is that all of this stuff is their world. So you just have to understand that. You just understand that, like, it's their world, it's their stuff. It's not ours, it's theirs. This is Satan's world, the world of and it's fun. I love commerce. I love all this stuff, right? But it's in their world. You're operating in their world. So yeah, at the end of the day, they're going to want it back, right? At the end of the day, they're going to want it back because it's not yours. It's not ours. That's right. What's ours is our heart, our bodies, our spirit, our soul, our human connections, our activities, how we walk the planet, what we decide to do with our life. That's ours, right? Our spirit, our soul, that's ours. Now, yes, unfortunately, at this point in time, really to like operate, you kind of have to rock in their world a little bit, which is fine. But it's just, I just want to, draw that clarity. And then, you're talking about the chip away, right? The 5%, the 2%, the can't find workers, the blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So we've talked about this a lot. This is exactly what's happening. And again, this is why we have to build the new, because those things are collapsing and the writing's not on the wall. We're in the collapse, right?
It's being slapped in the face with it.
Right. We're being dick slapped in the face with it. So it's not like, 5 years, 10 years. Oh, we got to get ready. Right. Like, no. it's collapsing. And so, yeah, there's not, you're not going to be able to go to the store and just pick up hardware. Like, you're not going to be able to just go and just buy it, buy a toilet and just buy stuff for this, probably at some point. So that's great, because that means now we have the freedom and we have the space to say, well, what's really the best way to design a house? What's really the best way to live? How do I want to integrate my life, from waking up in the morning and how I eat and how I have my family and how I set up this and that? What's the best way to do that? Because that stuff is not available anymore. That just made it easy, and it all works this way. This is how it works. This is what you do, right? This is fantastic. The only problem is, right, the sort of the game that they're playing, right, is that it's like, okay, production is failing. Oh my God, supply chain's collapsing. Oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, right? That's the reaction. And then that's fear. And then they got you. So we have to flip that, right? We have to flip that and say, the matrix is going away. This is fantastic. These idiots are collapsing their own world. Wonderful, right? So yeah.
Time to shine, right? Yeah, absolutely. Bob and Ann asks if you're still a U.S. citizen, even though you're living in Ecuador.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, so citizen is a whole weird subject. And we should refer back to whoever that guest was, whose name I've forgotten, who was talked about the sovereignty stuff, very knowledgeable. Do you remember?
Brent Johnson. Yeah.
Brent Johnson. Yeah. So if we're talking about citizenship, I would be much more interested in extricating myself from being a citizen than I would be shifting citizenship from one country to another. So that's kind of my thoughts there. But yes, I have never taken those steps in the US. So they consider me a citizen. I do not, but yes, absolutely. I have not taken those steps. I also have not taken the steps here to become a citizen. I could do that anytime I want, but again, I'm not so interested in marrying the government. I think they suck, and I don't want anything to do with them.
Right. Yeah, and it's so yeah, bringing this sort of full circle, because I do have to get going in a few minutes. The theater is going to do what the theater does, and they have actors and they have all the production value in place to make it look like there is some, something going on. And there is, there are, tanks and the rest of it moving into Ukraine, and I hear they stopped moving because they're out of gas, or maybe there's some mechanical issues or something like that. But again, we're living in a world of narrative. The mainstream narrative, or the people who behind the mainstream narrative, want us to believe and think a certain thing, and that's to cheer on Ukraine because that evil dictator Putin is trying to destroy the world. And now we have the poor Ukrainian victims in this who they have to have women fighting, and it's so sad because all that stuff. So that's one level. The next level is to sort of see the chessboard for what it is, as the shifting from the power from the west to the east, shifting from U.S. based sort of financial dominance to China and Russia financial dominance, and Asia, and also productive capacity over from the U.S., although that's already been happening, but to China, and have that be the sort of center of wealth and the new world. As we've seen, or as we've said many times before, is like China is the model for the new world order in terms of how they want to directly control you, the social credit score, the tracking, the monitoring, the compliance, and all the rest of it. That's sort of the model. And if they could get that as the capital, or so to speak, from the Hunger Games, then the rest of the world can sort of fall into place. And So that's on sort of the next level up. So we have, fighting on the ground. We have seeing the grand chessboard for what it is, and then above that is like, okay, well, what are we going to do about it? We have to figure out a way for us to survive and thrive with ourselves and our families. And in order to do that, we need to become more self-reliant. We need to get together with like-minded people. We need to form communities, and we need to do a whole bunch of things in order to have a happy and productive life outside of the system. Because in a very real way, we are being kicked out of that system, whether we like it or not. I think it's a good thing. But I also think that there is going to be a lot of work to be done, and it's not going to be so easy. And so, it's going to be fun, challenging, and sometimes trying times. But I think that's the basic high level understanding of what's going on. And so that's my take on it. Anything to add before we get going? You're muted.
I am muted. I think that's exactly right. Again, I think all your comments are absolutely spot on, all day. It's fun talking to you. and yeah, no, I concur completely. I know you got to run, so I enjoyed this. Good talk. We'll definitely try to keep things more regular going forward here if we can. Again, YouTube for us is just not working. So Asher's working on some solutions for that. Obviously, we're on all platforms. Specifically, we're encouraging people to get over to Rumble. We do have the Telegram chat, which I do not check a lot, but Asher does occasionally or often. I'm not sure.
I check it. Yeah.
Yep. So
got some good people
over there.
Yeah.
And I'll get in it at some point, hopefully here as well. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, and have a good interview, my brother.
All right, talking vegetable powders. Very exciting. Yeah. All right, everyone, have a good day, and we will